Hello archivists, and welcome back to our channel, or welcome to our channel if you're new. We're Six-Sided Scribes. My name is Nahal.
And I'm Jigal. We want to do a quick retrospective of the last Arc tournament we went to. This was about 2 weeks ago. And we thought we'd give you a little review of the armies we took, the armies we faced, and how we fared in each of our games.
Yeah, I understand that this is a bit of a different style of content that from what we usually do on this channel. Let us know if you like to see more of this stuff, where we just talk about general things that we go through in our hobby once every few weeks. Let us know in the comments what you think, if you'd like more of this. Otherwise, we'll of course keep the bad traps coming.
Yeah, and while you're down there in the comments, remember to like and subscribe, maybe share this with a friend. Every bit of exposure helps, and we are still trying to grow the channel.
Yep, the button should be down there somewhere.
Yeah. So if you are enjoying our content, please do share the joy.
But anyway, let's get into what we're here to talk about today. So we're going to be discussing what
the Arc 40K tournament.
Yes, pretty much.
This was the 25th anniversary for the Arc, and this is one of the biggest tournaments in Melbourne. Everyone looks forward to this every year. Like, there are people who just start painting armies with themes just for this tournament.
Yeah.
Now, Arc isn't your run-of-the-mill tournament. They like to emphasize armies with themes or ideas, you're custom. So there is a lot of creativity that goes behind the games, which is also reflected in the missions, as you will see.
Yeah.
My brother and I, we debated our armies for what? Weeks?
Yeah, that was something that they did very different. Usually when you go to a tournament, you've got a rules cutoff and a list cutoff date, by which date you have to submit your list in to come up to the tournament. But in case of Arc, we could actually come up on the day of the tournament just with the list in hand and go, hey, this is what I'm going to play today. So it was very different. On one hand, it was good because it let us change things to the last minute. But on the other hand, it was so stressful.
Yes, because it let you change things in the last minute.
Yeah, I remember I wrote my list the morning of the tournament. When I was walking my dog, I changed a few things and I said, hey, we need to print this out and go. So we actually printed things out on the way to the tournament.
Yeah, and I was planning to take Space Rules for like 6 months, just kept tinkering with the list, Wolfguard in, Wolfguard out, Redemptor in, Redemptor out. A week before the tournament, I decided to take my 1,000 Suns.
So, without further ado, yeah, we'll get to the list. We'll get to the list in a minute, but there's a bunch of links down there in the description just to give you an idea of how big Arc was in and of itself. We had the guys from Legends at Lore over there. They were doing a live stream. I'll make sure I put a link down in the description for that as well, so you can catch up on the action. The boys from Risky Rollers were there doing their thing. We also had the guys from Tabletop Time there, and they built this amazing table. They've done a video on that as well, where they've actually built and painted up an entire Warlord Titan and then just slaughtered it just to get this tableau done, and it was fantastic. I did not have the heart to watch that video myself. So the boys from Squidma, so the guys from Squidma were over. They flew in from overseas. They had a bit of a snafu being stuck in Singapore, but they still managed to make it, which was really nice. They judged the painting competition, the painting event. If you go down to the Arc website, you'll see a lot of the artwork that's on there as well. And I was told that Magicals decided to stop by for a bit of a chat. He should be on the live stream there. But I'll put a link down there for all these guys' channels. You can check them out if you're not already.
Well, with all of that, let's get into the armies we finally decided to take and the armies we faced.
Yeah. All right. So, do you want to start with your list, or should we go with mine?
All right. I'll do the honors.
Okay. Alrighty. We'll be back in a minute with Jugs' T-Sons. Okay. So, take us through your list.
All right. So, it was going to be Space Rules for the longest of time, but at the 11th hour, I was just sitting around at home trying to build some Votan, of all things. And I looked over at my brother's amazing well-painted Chaos Knight and decided, that might go well in my 1,000 Suns. So it was one really quick and busy night of basing this one Chaos Knight. And yes, so suddenly I was running an Arks of Omen detachment of 1,000 Suns.
Yeah, on that note, this is the debut of our Chaos Knights on our channel. The army's coming along soon. So far, I've just had the one model. More to come.
Yeah.
So, get into it.
Okay. So, my 1,000 Suns, I was running one Arks of Omen detachment with the compulsory unit being the troops, because I'm running rubrics, of course. Wanted to be a little cheeky and decided not to take an Infernal Master this time. So, I just have Ahriman, I decided to give buffing powers of all things, not my regular offensive Ahriman.
Yeah, you have a Killy Ahriman usually.
Yeah. And then I decided to take an offensive Exalted Sorcerer with the Athenian Scrolls and the Lord of Forbidden Lore. So, as a Rahati, he cast 3, knew 3, and I just essentially had him just mortal wound things off the board.
That's that guy.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Now, moving on to the main meat and potato of my list, I took 4 squads of rubrics, all in min squads. 1 with flamers, and 3 with bolters, and all with icons. And luckily, they actually did me pretty well in the tournament. They literally got me on my points.
Okay.
And to round off the list, I decided to take some Chaos Spawn. Now, these guys were just going to be my missile. I was going to Temple Surge them across the board and just get them straight in my enemy's face.
Okay. And how do you feel they did? I mean, did they operate as designed?
As you'll see after we get into our first missions, I wish I actually had time to practice the list, fine-tune my Saki powers, because I suddenly found Ahriman without even 1 offensive power was really failing me.
Yep. Well, we did write it on such short notice, so yeah, we wish you had some time. I think that I agree. I'd say the same.
Yeah. So speaking of which, let's see the list you wrote in the 1 hour before the tournament.
My list was interesting. It had a lot of evolutions. I went from a full Deathwing army, which is what you would have seen in our bat rep that we did a few weeks ago. There'll be a link to that one in the video if you haven't seen that either. But that was going to be the original list that I took, leaning a little more towards Deathwing. But the night before the game, I had a quick look through the player pack and I found out that we weren't playing on the standard 9th ed 60 by 44 inch table mats, and that we would be playing on the old 6x4 tables.
Yeah, and I think at a 1350 that would have meant a lot of maneuverability.
Yeah,
for Ravenwing.
And I just looked. No, yeah, I didn't have much in the way of Ravenwing. In the older list, it was just the Black Knights and the Talamaster. And I could not see myself actually foot-slogging that much Deathwing across the board. So I skewed hard at about 11 o'clock the night before I wrote a full Ravenwing list. And then said, well, these guys will do a lot of damage and they will die just as quickly. So the morning of the tournament, I actually wrote a Tri-Wing list. And I remember going, well, this list has a Dark Talon in it. So I took the Dark Talon out and added in 2 Invader ATVs. And an additional Black Knight, which then I proceeded to forget at home. Okay, so it was a single Arks of Omen detachment, of course, with focus on elites. Now, my Warlord, of course, was Azrael, and the reason I took him was because of the 2 CP that he gave me. I did not pay for his Warlord trait. Instead, I decided to put the Warlord trait onto my Chaplain, who was my second HQ. Now, this was a Primaris Chaplain on bike, of course, upgraded to Master of Sanctity. And he was also given the relic, the Mace of Redemption, which is the Dark Angel specific relic. Not as good as the Benediction of Fury, but basically has a powerful profile, which I quite liked.
Yeah, and I think you tried something different with Litany's Descent, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I usually go for the Mantra of Strength and the Canticle of Hate, which is what most people run. So I swapped out the Mantra of Strength for the Recitation of Focus. Okay. Now, this is good because I get to point at a core unit and give them +1 to hit for ranged attacks, which worked out really well on my Ravenwing units because, the minute they advance, they take the -1 to hit. Yeah. Getting into troops, I actually took a squad of Intercessors there. And all throughout 9th Ed, I've been running the Auto Bolt Rifle Intercessors. But this time I thought to swap them out for Stalkers. Because I really liked the fact that they were heavy weapons at AP2, and I was intending to play the entire game in Dev Doctrine. So
AP3 with 2 damage.
Yeah, so suddenly those guns become really good, especially in a post-Armor of Contempt world. Yeah.
And I think they were the only OPSEC in the list?
Yeah, pretty much. They were my only OPSEC. Moving into the elites, of course, I had 6 Black Knights in the list. I've only got 5 with Plasma, so I built a 6th one with the Grenade Launcher, which I then proceeded to forget at home on day one. So I had to play the list with one model less. Then I took in a big brick of 10 Terminators. They were all WYSIWYG, so 5 with Stormbolters and Chainfists, 5 of them with Thunderhammers and Storm Shields, and I had 2 Cyclones in there as well. That's them, and besides that, I also took in a lone Redemptor Dreadnought. He did a lot of work with his Plasma and his Onslaught Gatling Cannon, gave me a lot of DACA. And then moving on from that, it was basically just melters everywhere. So I took a squad of 3 attack bikes with multi-melters on them, and I put in the aforementioned Invader ATVs, again with multi-melters. So they did a lot of work for me. They were my anti-tank shooting. I think all of this came together at 1350 on the nose, but the biggest strength in this was the fact that I was starting the game with 6 EP. But with that being said, do we want to get into the missions and what happened?
Now, the organizers from Arc have been kind enough to actually share with us the entire mission pack. So we will be linking the mission pack down below as well. And we'll be back with our first missions and see just how well we did.
Sounds good. All right, so mission 1. This one was played back at Arc 2003, and it was called Thunderhawk Down. You should be seeing the map coming up now, but basically it was a triangular deployment along the long edge, so 9 inches from the center. You want to talk us through the twist of this mission, Jugs?
Oh yes, the twist that completely screwed me over so badly. One player, or maybe between 2 players, you roll 10d6, you add up the score, and then you add a 5th objective marker to the board. Now this is placed, the sum of your 10d6, away from one of the short edges of the board. Now this essentially is the Thunderhawk that's crashed, and whoever's holding it at the end of the game gets 15 victory points. But also, whoever's within 6 inches of where the Hawk crashes can and very truly will take a lot of mortal wounds.
Oh, so did you end up taking too many mortal wounds from that?
Let me remember. Yes, I lost 6 on 1 sorcerer.
Ooh. So the Hawk landed on a sorcerer?
Yes, the Hawk landed on my sorcerer.
Yes, yeah, I got lucky. What did you end up rolling on that?
Oh, I don't remember. I think it was like 49 inches.
49 inches?
Yeah.
Were you rolling all 10d6?
Yes, I was rolling all 10d6.
Ah, okay. See, the difference for us was I rolled 5, and then my opponent rolled 5, and then we added them both up, and then we just rolled another d6. So we have 1, 2, 3 this short table edge, and then 4, 5, 6 that. So it actually ended up 28 inches. So pretty close to the center, but nothing got hit. So we were both like, we just want to keep the center clear, because we don't know where the Thunderhawk lands.
So that's a good way to hedge your bet.
Yeah. But anyway, so what was your first game? Who did you go off into?
Okay, so I went into an actual friend who I've actually played quite a few times at home and at a previous Arc tournament. He brought an Eldar army, and he brought an Avada Kane. And I saw him, and I realized that, yes, my Chaos Knight must go into that.
Okay.
So, turn 1, my knight charged into an Avada Kane, who had lost his invul because of my psychic powers.
Yep.
I twisted of fate him. And yes, my knight proceeded to kill him very easily. But what I didn't realize is the Avada Kane punches back even harder after he's been killed.
He fights on deck.
Yeah. He fought me with 9 attacks, and he put a whopping 23 wounds into a knight that only had 22 wounds left.
Overkill by 1 point. Oh.
That was such an overextension on my part, because that one Chaos Knight was also guarding my 2 Exalted Sorcerers.
So they weren't long either.
Yeah. It did not help that I think my dice were a little mad at me because I haven't taken them out in a while. Because I, a 1000 Suns player with about 14 psychic casts across my army, only managed to cast 2. 2 powers.
Oh, wow.
Between my Cabal points, CP rerolls, 2. That's it.
Wow, that is nuts. Well, did you end up winning that, or did you lose it? What happened there?
I think it's very safe to say I lost that one.
Yeah.
My knight died, didn't blow up. The Thunderhawk crashed, killed my Exalted Sorcerer. and I rolled the dice. It was
cocked.
So we had to re-roll it, and it was very easily a 6. So I was thanking my lucky stars,
Yeah.
and it re-rolled it into a 6.
Okay.
My Exalted Sorcerer only has 6 wounds. It was a very rough opening for the tournament for me.
Well, I had a similar experience. For me, I went into Orcs turn 1. It was a very aggressive list. He had 2 war bosses that he had kitted up to the teeth, and he actually played them really well. But I think what let me down was just the layout of the map. So thinking back now, I think my map was way too dense. Besides that, I think my dice rolls failed as well. My Redemptor Dreadnought, I spent 2 CP for Weapons of the Dark Age to take his plasma gun from 3 damage to 4 damage. I spent 1 CP to give him Wisdom of the Ancients so he could reroll once to hit. And so that's already 3 CP spent. And then I rolled the number of shots on the plasma, 3 shots. I said, no, I've spent 3 CP. I'm going to spend 1 more because why not?
Sunk cost.
And then rolled 2. And then, so I got a 2. So after all of that, after a 4 CP burn, I got 2 shots into his, I think it was a truck. Only 1 went through. So all of that for 4 damage into a 12 wound truck or a 16 wound truck, something like that. Anyway, did nothing.
And I've seen that same maneuver just vaporize a Plague Boss Call off the board.
Yeah, I've taken out Plague Boss Crawlers, I've taken out Demon Rosses, high tanky stuff, but that day the dice were mad at me. Besides that, my Chaplain landed, brought down my Terminators, and they had to make a 7-inch charge with the Canticle of Hate on, and then I failed it with a CP reroll. So my Terminators were stuck in the middle of nowhere, and then unfortunately my Chaplain ended up making his charge into a squad of tank busters that put him like 6 inches away from one of the war bosses. So that did not end well. So I had to spend another 2 CP for him to fight and then fall back to the safety of the Terminator, so effectively burning out my entire CP cache towards the end of that.
Okay.
So needless to say, that game did not go well for me either.
It was a rough first game for both of us.
Yeah, but start at the bottom, we can only move up from there, right? Wrong, because we'll tell you what happened in our second game in just a minute.
Okay. Moving on to round 2, our second mission, which went well for me, but disastrous for you, apparently.
Yeah. So second mission with this one was called Strike Force Alpha. Again, map should be coming up on the screen anytime now. So this one was, of course, a short edge deployment, sort of hammer and anvil.
Yeah.
And
it's got 6 objectives, very much a similar match you see from the mission tag.
Yeah. This one was hold 1, hold 2, hold more, similar to the last one. I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but yeah. This one had an interesting twist, though. So talk us through it.
So the twist for this game was that each army had to designate a strike force. Now, this had to be at least 1 unit, but couldn't be more than 300 points. And we had to secretly note where they would essentially deep strike from.
No, so they had to come off of strategic reserves, effectively.
Yep. Now, the benefit of this strike force is were not restricted by any of the strategic reserve rules.
Yeah, so they
or even the 9-inch rule. But they had to come down on our secretly noted point. Okay. So we had to mark our distances out. And that's exactly where the strike force.
Yeah, I think they had to end up wholly within 6 inches of that one specific point. Okay, so who was your secret strike force alpha?
Well, because it's 1350 game, I just melt the enemy lines throughout the entire tournament as my standard.
Yep.
So I figured, it's a good chance to just have another squad of rubrics going there.
Okay.
Because I'm not giving up either my Exalted Sorcerers and nor am I giving up my Knights.
Yep.
My 1 Knight. And since my opponent was bringing Harlequins for the second matchup, I got a chance to redeem myself for my blunder in the Eldar game.
Okay, well, for me, I found very quickly after round 1 that I had not teched into Orcs because I did not have as much firepower. I didn't have as much DACA, I didn't have much in the way of strength 5 and above firepower. Yes. So I was praying that I don't go into Orcs, and as the Chaos Gods would will it, I went into Orcs again. But this time, this was a bit more of a fun army for me, actually.
Yeah.
That was a closer game. The theme of it was really cool. So my opponent had his entire orc army painted up like a pizza shop.
Oh yes, I remember that one. Wasn't he the army that won best theme?
Yeah, he won one of the funkiest themes awards. So he was called Wah Pizza, which is really nice. He had a bubble tea chucker, and his kill rigs were not his kill rigs. He had killer cans that were painted up to look like pizza ovens, which is really nice. And then he had objective markers that were effectively just pizzas. So it's really nice. So it was a fun game, really close. But to answer your original question as to what my Strike Force Alpha was, it was my Dreadnought. Similar to you, I put my Dreadnought in strategic reserves, 185 points, bit of a tanky unit, and if I could get him close enough where he could be in combat, he could have done some real damage.
Yeah, because your opponent doesn't know where your strike force is coming down, and they could literally land in engagement.
Yeah, pretty much. So, like you, even I took behind enemy lines, and I had my Dreadnought come in, say, 18 inches from the back or something like that. So it was well and truly in my opponent's deployment zone.
I chose to be a little more conservative in my strike force because I knew I was going behind enemy lines. I just had one squad rubrics drop off in like a farthest corner behind obscuring, just out of line of sight.
Yeah.
I just needed them there. I didn't need them doing any killing.
Yeah, so for me it was also twofold. So one is, the Dreadnought offensively is really good, but also defensively, because he had so much high power and high strength weapons, I wanted to keep the Dreadnought alive. It worked for that as well for me. But anyway, talk me through your game. What happened?
Okay, so this game went significantly better for me. I went against Harlequins, and I think he brought just 4 squads of troops in transports each.
Yep. Star Weavers?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Star Weavers. And I think he had a Dead Jester and a Troop Master. Just a very standard Harlequin army.
Yep.
There was a bit of a confusion that my opponent didn't know. I told him about it, but he chose not to believe me. But for some reason, he did not believe that his troops had OPSEC. So this played very counter to him, because Harlequins are very fast. Like turn 1, he was right in my face.
Yep.
But unfortunately, because he always had to have something sitting in the backfield for the one objective, he kept sending his Harlequins in at me in waves.
That wouldn't end well for them.
Exactly. And his only anti-tank was fusion pistols.
Yep.
Against a Chaos Knight, he needed to hit me with overwhelming force, but he just couldn't manage that. He just kept sending one vehicle and then troops, and then one vehicle and troops, and they just kept coming to me and dying.
That would suck. So I think the lesson to be learned here is read your codex. No, mine was interesting. That dice really betrayed me. They didn't betray me as such, as much as they actually went his way. Because in his list he had a lone kill rig, which turn 1 was down to like 8 or 9 wounds, and then turn 2, when my Redemptor dropped, was down to like 3. So he was on his bottom bracket. Still did damage. In his list, he also had Gaskull.
Oh, yes.
Now, of course, Gaskull's an absolute tank because of his face caps. So I threw 5 Deathwing Terminators into him, kept him tied down for 2 whole battle rounds, to their credit, which was nice, but eventually they died. Brought him down to 3 wounds. Then my Redemptor went, charged him, punched him, and he had to make 3 4-up saves, and then he ended up he rolled 3 5s, so he made all his inbounds, and I just went, dang it. He should have been dead. He was down to 2 wounds at the end of that, and he turned around, punched my Redemptor Dreadnought back, probably back to the grace of the Emperor at this stage, because he just died, and then I said, cool, let me see if he explodes, and he did. My Redemptor blew up. D3 mortal wounds going into Gaskull. I said, cool, he dies, he can take Gaskull with him. Just 2 wounds, needed 2 mortal wounds to go through. Rolled a 5, so that was 3 mortal wounds going into Gaskull, and I was like, awesome, I can take Gaskull. He had Makari right there giving him a 6-up Field of Pain. I said, best case scenario, he rolls 1-6. Gaskull dies with me because he's only on 2 wounds. He rolled 3 6s. 3 6s. And I just went, what just happened? Because Gaskull, he took out a squad of Terminators, then walked up, punched a Chaplain, and then along his way. and then just came up and just decimated a dreadnought, and then who blew up, and he just walks away from it.
Yeah.
And at that point, I went, cool, I'm done.
Well, I guess the Orcs really believed in his invulnerability.
Oh yeah, but having said that, on the other side of the board, his strike force was a squad of commandos that he basically dropped in and charged right into a squad of my Terminators and Azrael. So no, he just charged my Terminators. Azrael, he intentionally stayed out of combat. But then in the next turn, I charged with Azrael, used it to get onto an objective, so which got me primary points, which was nice. But then between the Terminators and Azrael, one out of combat and no more commandos, so which was pretty cool. But either way, it was a much closer loss for me in that game as well. Again, reinforcing the fact that this list was not built to take on Orcs, but it was so much fun.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so that was mission 2 for me. You want to get into mission 3?
Yeah, we'll be back in a second.
Cool.
So here we are with mission 3, our third round. I think this is where it swung up for both of us, didn't it?
Yeah, so this was, I think, the start of the upswing for me.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the mission first. So this one was called Jailbreak.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one was played back in 2009 at Arks back then. Here, the key thing to remember is we had to bring in 3 non-combatant models, which was ironic for me because I had built up 3 models, which was a Master of Possession and 2 Greater Possess back from the old Chaos Space Marine start collecting.
Oh yeah, this is back when you actually had hope about a fallen index.
Yeah, no. GW, if you're watching, we want a fallen codex.
But also remember, any Dark Angels players out there, we don't know what the Fallen are. Don't hunt us.
Yeah, so, which was ironic because it looked like the Fallen were running towards the Dark Angels.
Okay.
But, yeah. So, basically, you had 3 models that you had to set up on the edge of your opponent's deployment zone. And at the end of every turn in the morale phase, they would move 2d6 inches towards your deployment zone if your opponent wasn't controlling them. And similarly on your side, you had to basically hold 3 hostages, and if you didn't control them, they would move 2d6 towards your opponent.
If you were controlling them, they would essentially count as an additional model in your army that could move 6 inches, so you could move them around.
Yep.
Now this mission was basically Dawn of War deployment, long inches with 6 objectives.
Yep.
It was a hold 2, hold 3, and hold more.
Yep.
And with 3 additional essentially objectives to hold. It's a lot of objectives to hold.
Yeah. How did you go?
Well, I took in a couple of my Votan that I took. Now, it's important to remember that for the secondary mission of the game, you were to get 5 victory points for each of your hostages that you got back, and 2 victory points for each of the enemy's hostages that you held.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because I went into Custodes in my third game. Custodes are my nightmare army because my thousands just can't really handle them, especially if they take the 4-up Feeling of Pain.
Yeah.
Because they can deny me right across. And it was just a slog because he kept throwing units into my knight, and my knight was the biggest threat.
Oh.
And my rubrics were just trying to outflank, just get me behind enemy lines, mutate landscapes. I think that was also the one where I chose to burn empires.
Okay.
Because I saw 6 objectives, and I thought maybe I could just, bum rush them and get 12 victory points out right off the bat.
Yeah. How did that work?
We essentially switched sides of the table. So my hostages went into his loving arms and his hostages went into my arms. So yeah, it was a good game. It was a slog. It took me a lot of effort to kill all his models off.
Yeah.
But essentially I did end up tabling him. The knight really helped.
Yeah, okay.
So it was a crushing victory for me. So what was your first non-orc army that you went into?
So my third round was actually quite a lot of fun. I ended up playing this amazing dude who had a really well painted army. He was playing Flesh Terrors, but Ultima Founding. So his entire army was Primaris.
Oh.
So there was none of the Sangard and none of the Death Company and none of that. So really fun army. He had quite a few Outriders. He had a Chaplain on bike as well. So mirroring mine. Yeah, we had a lot of similarities. He took Blade Guard, which I was thinking of taking. He had squads of Outriders, which was really fast. He had one Redemptor Dreadnought just like me. He had a Chaplain just like me. Table was really interesting. We had a lot of barricades. We had one big ruin in the center, but pretty open. And he ended up going first. So I think his mistake was that he overextended a little bit. So turn one, his Outriders were pretty much at the edge of my deployment zone, and they already got the hostage that was on the far end. He moved his Blade Guard up. He moved his Captain up. So he actually had a Gravis Captain, which was a really well converted model. So he used the Gravis Captain from the old Dark Imperium box. From 8th Ed, and Tor Garadon. So he actually had the upper half of the Dark Imperium Captain, but the bottom half of Tor Garadon, and it actually worked really well. Okay. Besides that, he had everything in his army had wings, and this was, I think, from the old Warcry kit, which was a really good conversion. Yeah. But yeah, so coming back to the game, he overextended, and then he sent his Chaplain down the far side, the opposite end. And there was this massive ruin with just this little narrow channel about 6 inches towards the edge of the board with a squad of Outriders.
Yeah, I remember talking to him. I think he was trying to divert your army on one side. He had a strategic plan behind it.
Yeah, but his plans did work, because in my mind, actually, that was a game I took Stubborn Defiance as an objective, and I said, okay, my only OPSEC unit is my squad of Intercessors, and there was this objective that was about 6 inches just outside the deployment zone. So I put my Intercessors on the line, and I said, cool, I'm going to walk up onto that objective, stand there, put a banner, which was again one of my other objectives, and just hold that objective behind a barricade.
Okay.
Until we went into deployment, and then he put a squad of Infiltrators on it.
Yeah. So I think that was also another issue. He didn't realize that the Infiltrators had to stay 9 inches away from deployment zones.
Yeah, but regardless, 9 inches away, he would have still ended up on the objective.
Yeah, because
he
did end up going first, so he could have just walked up on it either
Correct. Way. So either way, it was a non-issue. But so that really hindered me from getting points on Stubborn Defiance, because what happened effectively was my Intercessors shot those Infiltrators, did very little damage. I think killed one guy, and then charged them, and then we were just stuck in a deadlock for the entire game. So Infiltrators fighting Intercessors over a barricade, and then I couldn't get any points on Stubborn Defiance because we weren't holding that objective. But coming back to the Chaplain and the Outriders, he actually tried to outflank them to sort of get me to divert my forces. Mm-hmm. But in my turn, all I had to do was move with my Dreadnought, and I could still draw lines across the board. And then my attack bikes came up, and basically one Dreadnought and 3 Melter bikes later, so that entire valley of death was just cleared. So that really hurt him, I think, losing his Chaplain that early in the game. But yeah, so on the other side, he overextended with his Outriders again. They quickly died to Black Knights. And then my Terminators moved up and basically got into a gridlock with his Blade Guard. And I think Cyclones did a bit of damage into his Redemptor, so that wasn't long for the world either. Long story short, this game was a solid victory for the Dark Angels. But it was so much fun because we were just laughing about how the Fallen were running back to the Dark Angels, and we just went, what nightmarish ideas did the Blood Angels come up with to scare the Fallen towards the Dark Angels. The gameplay was amazing. Dice didn't let either of us down. It was just pure tactics, but we had so much fun doing it. Like, we were laughing all the way, which is basically what all Warhammer games should be.
It's one of the Arc rules. Play for fun.
Yeah, and we certainly did. So that was
that was mission 3. Yeah.
Let's get into mission 4. Let's do that.
So on to mission 4. Now this was day 2 because it's 3 games a day, and this mission is called Total Recall. Now it's got the same deployment and objective marking placings as Data Sky Salvage.
Yep.
Which made a lot of people mourn right across the hall.
I was one of them.
So this mission was debuted back in 2010, and it's essentially Data Sky Salvage, hold 2, hold more. But the twist on this one is you each had to pick 3 objectives for the opponent to hold, but you're not allowed to tell them. you're supposed to pick them on dice, put the dice on the table, and cover with your hand. And you are only allowed to lift your hand for as long as it took you to say the words Total Recall. And it was up to your opponent to remember which objectives you had declared.
Yep. So, which objectives did you pick for your opponent?
I picked objectives 1, 3, and 4, which really doesn't mean anything depending on how the maps are laid out.
Yeah.
But essentially, there were 3 objectives to one side. Because once again, I'd gone into Custodes. This time, he brought a Dreadnought and a tank. And I just decided, like, I just want to keep him on one side of the board.
Ah, okay.
So my plan was to just pick the 3 objectives on one side, and then I would just burn empires and banners up on the other side of the board.
Okay.
Unfortunately, my opponent had the same idea, and he picked the same objectives for me.
The same thing happened with me. So we were actually fortunate with my opponent. So he and I had numbered objectives. So he put down 3 and I put down 3. Went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we knew where they were, and we both ended up picking 2, 3, and 5, which I thought was really funny. But I don't know why he would pick 2, given 2 was in my deployment zone. So I had to literally hold my home field objective. And the mission rule was you had to be holding the objective at the end of the game for 5 points apiece. But we just thought it was funny that both of us actually came up with 2, 3, and 5, and we just had a massive laugh about it. But anyway, let's get into it. Who did you go into and how did you fare?
Okay, so I went into Custodes again, and this time it was the dreaded, Dread Host with the ability of the for our field of pains.
Ah, so ignore mortal wounds.
Yes.
Ouch, that would have hurt.
So yes, my knight, the Chaos Knight, did a lot of work in that army because the rest of my units just failed to get anything done. And with Treasure on Valorous on top of that in the back,
Yeah.
I was maybe getting like 3 victory points from behind enemy lines.
Oh,
But
okay.
even that just forced me to constantly reallocate rubrics to just sit in the backfield back there.
Yeah.
So he wasn't really cutting down my sorcerers or Exalted or Arman or the knight,
Yeah.
because I think he just saw the knight and even he realized it was a little difficult.
Okay.
But he just kept cutting through my rubrics.
What did he have in his list?
So he had a Caladius Grav tank, he had Treasure on Valorous, he had the Custodian Dreadnought.
Okay. Was it the Telemon or was it the Contemptor pattern? I forget the name.
I think it was the Telemon.
Okay, the big boy.
Yeah, the big boy.
Whoa, yeah, okay, they're fun.
And he ignored my Chaos Knight for the most part because on his opening salvo, he had essentially brought it down to its 3rd bracket.
Oh wow, so less than 5 wounds.
Yes, he in one round of shooting, essentially brought the knight down to 3 wounds.
Oof.
And again,
That hurts.
it's mea culpa on this one because it wasn't until after the shooting phase, literally until I made the last save, that I realized that I could have settled for a 4-up in one.
Yeah, rotate aren't you? That old chestnut.
Yeah, that old chestnut. So yeah, even after a day of playing Chaos Knight, it never occurred to me that I could just rotate my Iron Shield. So
Sucks when that happens.
yeah, so I had to spend a CP to put him back in the top bracket and move on from one end, and he was able to put down the tank.
Yep.
But unfortunately, I ended up playing into my opponent's plan because he wanted me to move my knight off to one end.
Yeah, okay. Nice.
So, what about you? How did your game go?
Mine was quite interesting. They were still fun. It was, I went into Leagues of Votan. So at 1350 points, it was quite an interesting list. So my opponent was running the Great Arthurian League. So he brought Uther.
Yes, the Destined.
Yeah, so he bought him, and I really underestimated how good he was. Anyway, so he had Uther, he had a Forge Master.
And the Hecaton?
He had a big Hecaton, and yeah, that thing still haunts my nightmares. So he had a Hecaton, he had 2 squads of bikes, no troops. He had a squad of Hearthguard. Yep, so Hearthguard, they also live in my nightmares now. And he had a squad of 5 Chthonian Berserks, and and a Sagittal. So that basically was his 1350 points. Now he had so that was basically what he started with. And
who went first?
he did.
Oh, that's not
So,
good.
so my entire game was played on the back foot. Like, I literally managed to swing the game in my favor on turn 5, and because I was going second, I scored at the end of the end of the turn, and that was literally when I swung a victory. So it was literally the bottom of the 5th.
Oh, you had to fight for it.
I had to fight for it because turn 1 he came up with his Hecaton Land Fortress, and I was thinking about it whether I should have pre-game moved my knights to a more defensive position, and I said, no, I'll tank it. But what I didn't realize was he could turn a wound roll to a 6.
Yep.
Which he did with the Hecaton on the railgun, causing the damage to spill over. So turn 1, I lost 4 bikes with the 5th one down on 1 wound. So naturally, at the bottom of turn 1, I had no Black Knights left. But that was all he could kill because everything else was pretty well obscured. I naturally retaliated. This is where my attack bikes came into play. Put my Chaplain's +1 to hit from his Canticle, from his Recitation on focus on the attack bikes, gave them Azrael's full rerolls, drove him straight up right into melter range of the Hecaton Land Fortress.
You wanted vengeance.
I wanted vengeance so bad. But yeah, they ended up bringing the Hecaton down to 3 wounds, and then my Redemptor finished it off. But then he had a squad of bikes on that one objective that was literally the bottom far end.
Yeah. And
all the portrait shots kept going into those bikes. Till the end of the game, I never managed to kill them. So they got him points for that. Anyway, he had his bikes moved on to the other one, which my Terminators killed off pretty quickly. He actually even moved his Hearth Guard right into my backlines, teleported them for 1 CP. And I didn't realize that Volcanite pistols do mortals on hits. And before he did that, he actually put Uthar's full rerolls on them, and he just went fishing for 6s.
Yeah,
so,
this is actually news for me. I'm actually starting a Votan army, but I kept thinking Volcanites on wound rolls are 6, not hit rolls.
No, this was hit rolls, and I actually confirmed it in the codex. So it was actually hit rolls, and he gave them full rerolls hit from Uthar, which was nuts. So they landed there, and then the next thing I knew, I was down 3 Terminators. And these are Deathwing Terminators, so that hurt. So killing them was a priority as well. And then, so basically, turn 1, the Hecaton died, the Sagittor was really hurt. But then I had my bikes out basically where the Hecaton was, they were exposed. And then out from the Sagittor came the Chthonian Berserks. So turn 2, he retaliated even harder. So the attack bikes were gone. So between the attack bikes going and me losing all my Black Knights, there was my anti-tank gone.
Yeah.
So at that point I had 1 Redemptor, I had 1 ATV left, and I had my Cyclone missile launchers and my Terminators, but they couldn't do anything because they were obscured. And I managed to basically just hold on over there and get points. And Azrael actually did work. He actually helped take down about 2 or 3 of the Hearth Guard, and he tanked quite a few shots. He actually made it out with 2 wounds still left. But in the last turn, that's when I managed to use my Raven Wing, get onto one of the Total Recall objectives with the last ATV, get onto hold my home field objective with just Azrael.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up winning. Oh, also, shout out to my Intercessor Sergeant, who basically, I lost 3 guys from shooting from the bikes. The 4th guy ran to morale. Dark Angels auto pass morale, of course. That was really handy. The Dark Angels auto pass attrition. So I only lost the 4th guy to morale. And the sergeant stood there in dense cover on an objective and took shooting from 1 bike, a Sagittor, and I think he took the portrait shots from wasn't the Hecaton. It was something. It was all the shots from the Forge Master.
Oh,
all the Corvies. And he just stood there, and all I had on him was transhuman physiology. That was it. 1 guy, 1
that
CB.
is grim resolve right there.
Yeah, and he just stood there with 1 toe and dense cover, and that was it. He just stood there, just kept making 5-up saves the whole time. He eventually died, but he's going to get a field promotion for that, naturally. He gets a dreadnought named after him.
So this game was a win for you.
Yeah, so this game was a win. Literally in the last turn, I managed to swing
on primaries
and managed to get I got 10 on my total recall. He got the other 5 because we did pick the same objectives. So that was a close win, but a win nonetheless.
Yeah, and for me, I just got tabled. Like, he killed me down to the last model. Like, I had nothing left.
It's a crushing loss for you.
Yeah, crushing loss. I think I scored a grand total of 30 points versus his 90.
Ow. Well, yep, that's a crushing loss for sure.
Pretty much.
But let's move on to mission 5 on that note. Okay.
So, mission 5. This one is titled Cold Snap. And for whatever reason I didn't know, it made the entire call just moan in agony when they heard the name.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So apparently it's played in 2015. Now this is again a hammer and anvil deployment with 5 objectives on it, one in each deployment zone.
Yep.
The twist on this one is apparently the whole battlefield is blanketed in a blizzard.
Yep.
So if the blizzard will stick around for every battle round unless one of the opponents rolled a d6 and they were able to roll under the battle round.
Yeah. So turn 1 it was always there.
And this meant that perpetually for all range or melee weapons, we were all -1 to hit.
Yeah.
And that had some really interesting connotations right across the board.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to somebody and who said that they went into orcs and the orcs were less than useless in shooting because they were just hitting on 6s the whole time. So imagine army-wide Overwatch. That was the best that they could do.
Yeah. So I, in this mission, went against Sisters. And for the first time, I actually went against Celestine.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
How did she do,
oh
the
my
old girl?
God, she gave me a headache. Because throughout the entire game, because it was Cold Snap, so I knew everyone was -1 to hit. And my opponent he was running Bloody Rose, but he didn't bring any Repentia.
Okay.
He decided to bring Celestine and a really murderous Canoness.
Oh, yeah, the Murder Canoness, we all know her.
And then he just brought some Dominions and no Retributors, but he had Mortifiers and Sacrosancts.
Sacrosancts?
Yeah.
Okay. So, shields.
Yes, the shields.
Okay.
So, since we both knew it was a Cold Snap, we both deployed conservatively. And I was just kind of counting on my Chaos Spawn moving up.
Yeah.
And just my nice 10-inch move. But turn 1, he just played offensively with Celestine. He moved her right behind some obscuring right in my lines. So turn 2, she was already up for a charge.
Yeah.
And the Dominion Rhino's pre-game move.
Yep.
Celestine, for the entire game, I kept killing off her Gemini and kept bringing her down to 1 wound. And one time, I was actually killed her off in shooting, like a stray plasma pistol killed her.
Yeah.
And he CP rerolled the save because Celestine apparently gets back up on her first death.
Yeah.
And if she had died that turn, my Chaos Spawn would have just charged her.
Oh,
Nice in the fighting in the charge phase.
Yeah.
So he couldn't afford her dying just before the fight phase. So he spent a CP and resurrected her. And that is about as close as I ever got to killing her, because every time I bring her down to 1 wound between a 2-up armor and a 4-up invul, he would just forego his moving, resurrect a Gemini, and bring her back up to full wounds. And I would just facepalm.
Jeez. Yeah. Okay, I had much better luck on Cold Snap. My opponent, unfortunately, not. Really great opponent. He had a really beautifully painted Grey Knight army. We had a nice chat about it. It sort of hurt him a little bit, but didn't affect me so much because I was basically just playing the entire game in Devastator Doctrine, right?
Okay.
So I was walking around and advancing my bikes every chance I got. So I was taking the -1 to hit anyway. So the code wasn't affecting my bikes. My Terminators had chain fists. My Terminators had heavy missile launchers.
And Thunder Hammers,
And Thunder Hammers. So they were, again, operating with a natural -1 to hit. So didn't affect them either. I think the only ones that are actually affected were my Chaplain. So it made my Recitation of Focus effectively useless. And it affected my Dreadnoughts. But I found that it actually helped a little bit for me to just stand still and use Grim Resolve.
So that counteracted it.
That actually counteracted it a little bit. But the map that we were playing on had quite a few forests and quite a few dense terrain. So again, whatever my Grim Resolve would counteract, the dense cover would take away anyway. In this game, this was, I think, one of the first games that I went first. So all throughout Arc, 4 games in, I ended up going second. But this was the first game I went first. And he brought 2 Grandmaster Nemesis Dreadnoughts. He had a squad of Interceptors that he combat squadded later. 2 squads of Strike Marines. A big brick of, I think it was 6 Paladins. And I basically rode my Black Knights into their faces with Azrael's full rerolls, popped off Weapons of the Dark Age, because at that point, to get them from 2 damage to 3 damage, just so everyone that got through would basically just kill a Paladin.
Yeah.
And I think I rolled the hottest dice ever, because out of the, 10 shots that I had 9 hits.
Ooh. Impressive hitting on 4s. That's impressive.
Hitting on 4s with full rerolls, of course. 9 hits. The one reroll that I rolled missed was a 2. So still didn't kill a 1. Not a 1. Didn't kill a bike. Got there. And then the grenade launcher, of course, did some work as well. But managed to drop 3 Paladins, if memory serves me right.
Okay.
The multi-melters did some work. They did really well. I put my attack bikes into his Grandmaster Nemesis Dreadnought, and he used, I think it's a Warlord trait or a Relic. I'm not sure. I'm not primarily a Grey Knights player. But one or the other that lets him teleport out of the way and deploy somewhere else. So he actually deployed his Dreadnought in my backlines, 9 inches away from my Intercessors and my Redemptor Dreadnought.
Oh, okay, that's clever.
Yeah, it was, but in hindsight, he remembered he could have maybe gone a little further back because it was still my turn. But anyway, so he put his Nemesis Dreadnought in the back, and my multi-melters then went into the Rhino. So on the front there, that happened. In the back, my Redemptor Dreadnought turned around, put the plasma into the Nemesis Dreadnought because he couldn't get away, put 3 wounds into it, made a 9-inch charge, and then just punched it out of existence. So he just looked, and it was literally to the wound. So his Grey Knight was down to 11 wounds, and that's exactly how much damage I did with
Redemptors
with the Redemptor.
Dangerous up close.
Yeah, and it was hot dice because even in combat I was still hitting on 4s because of the cold snap. So that had me really anxious because having a Nemesis Dreadnought in my backlines is not good play.
Yeah.
But yeah, my Dready just walked around and just went boom, and no more Nemesis Dreadnought. And my opponent was like, well, I should have possibly put him a little further back. But, it was just downhill from there. Yeah. But my opponent was such a great sport. He brought back a few of the Paladins, gave me a bit of a fight along the way, but he had Servitors holding his home field objective.
Servitors? I don't think I've ever seen Servitors actually.
Yeah, he had some 15 points or something to spare, which he didn't know what to do with, so he brought Servitors along. And then eventually it ended up with my Thunderhammer Terminators that walked up and had got that objective.
Ooh.
And what I think also hurt him was the rule that if you're not holding your home field objective, you don't get your CP for the battle round.
Ah, yes.
Did you have that?
I was so busy trying to kill the opponent's sisters, I think we both forgot about it.
Yeah, no.
Oh, yes, remembered. And in addition, for the mission, the command reroll is actually 2 CP. That's another thing my opponent and I forgot. We remembered in turn 3.
We forgot that too, throughout the game. I didn't remember it until you mentioned it to me. Yeah. But yeah, we did remember the fact that if you don't hold your home field objective, you don't get your CP for the turn. So that really hurt my opponent as well. And but yeah, no, that was a crushing win for the Dark Angels.
And it was a crushing loss for the Thousand Suns because he rolled a lot of 6s on his denies. He denied so many of my powers.
Oof.
Sisters.
Oh well. Anyway. You win some, you lose some, right? I mean, that's the fun of it, I guess. But with that said...
After that cold snap, let's move on to Mission 6.
Yeah. See you soon. Okay. So, Mission 6, the final mission for Arc 2023, the 25-year anniversary, was called Double or Nothing. Now, this was a mission that was played at Arc 2016. It should be coming up right now, but corner deployments, 5 objectives, 1 in the middle, 9-inch circle of no man's land.
Yep.
We all know that map.
Standard map, yeah.
Yeah. The objectives in this mission had no bearing whatsoever towards primary, because the primary was just kill your opponent. The secondaries were only there in case we picked any secondary objectives that required us to do actions or be on a certain part of the board or something like that. Besides that, it was literally... you get points equal to the power level of your opponent unit that you destroy. So that was primary. So you kill something that's worth 5 power, you got 5 victory points for it, and that was it. Except you had to secretly note down an ace and a joker. So secretly, before the game starts, you had to pick one of your opponent's units to be your ace. And if you killed it, you got double whatever their power level was worth in victory points.
Yeah.
And the other one was the joker, which was one of your units. And if they died, your opponent would effectively just get 0. Yeah, so yeah, there was that. It does lead to that interaction where you pick a unit of theirs to be your ace, but they pick the same unit to be a joker. So that would count as 0 at the end of the day.
Yes.
Didn't happen for us. At least didn't happen for me.
Yeah.
But you want to talk us through what happened in that mission for you?
Yes. It was just a pure fun mission because it was the last game of the tournament, and I think everyone was just fried.
Yeah.
And I had the lucky honor of going against Grey Knights.
Okay.
1000 Suns was the Grey Knights.
That was so thematic.
Yeah. And my opponent and I, we didn't really pick jokers per se because we were both too mentally tired. And I decided to throw my opponent a bone and just told him that I will not make my Chaos Knight a joker.
Okay.
And I encouraged him to make it an ace because the Chaos Knight was power level 28.
Yep.
So if he managed to bring that behemoth down, he got 56 victory points right off the bat. That just maxed his primaries right there.
Okay, there you go. That did it. Nice.
And he brought just a lot of infantry. He didn't bring any Dread Knights.
Yeah.
So it was just pure Psychic Might to match Psychic Might.
Yeah.
And I had the honor of going first. And I decided, I was not going to be coy about this mission. I did not want to play the mission in this one. So, turn 1, I had the Chaos Knight 9 inches away from his units because I failed the charge. My Chaos Spawn has successfully charged 3 units, including a bunch of his characters. I picked Assassin because he brought 4 characters, and I decided, I want to kill. And yeah, in turn 1, I essentially killed 3 of his units just off in melee.
Ouch.
He turned around and returned the favor.
Yeah.
Because I overextended everything again. But
yeah, and the Space Wolf came out.
Yes, my Space Wolf came out because I saw blood. And yeah, it was so much fun because I kept putting Psychic Powers, he kept denying them. He kept casting Psychic Powers, I kept denying them. My +1 to cast was outmatched by his +1 to deny.
Oh wow, okay, that's that's fun.
And I think the game ended with him literally tabling me off the board because I just had a bunch of smaller rubrics sitting in the backfield trying to deep strike deny him because he had a bunch of units with jump packs, and for some reason I thought he had the power to redeploy them.
Okay.
Because he took behind enemy lines and I tried to deny him. And yeah, so I just had a score of rubrics that did nothing through the back of the game.
Yeah. Okay.
I took Mutate Landscape, tried it on one objective, he denied it, and then after that we were so busy killing each other that it just never came up.
So that's hilarious. So what was in his list?
He had Castellan Crow.
Yeah.
He had another character with a Warlord that gave him a 3-up in one.
Okay. Wow. Right.
Yeah, that was quite nice. And outside of that, he had 1 Rhino, which I tried my best, but I couldn't kill it because I kept having left around 1 wound.
Yep. Sucks when that happens.
Yeah. He had a bunch of Interceptors. He had 1 Dreadnought. And I am angry, J-Dub. I'm very angry that they get to have Librarian Dreadnoughts. My opponent, my Grey Knights player, told me that Magnus invented Librarian Dreadnoughts. I should have one. Give me a Librarian Dreadnought.
Give the 1000 Suns a Librarian Dreadnought, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, G-Dub, if you're listening, 1000 Suns. Librarian Hellbrutes.
So, yeah. The game ended with him tabling me, but I think I still won out on points.
Okay. Wow.
Because just, I think a couple of my secondaries worked out and just plain kills.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my game. That was my last game.
Nice.
How did yours turn out? Who was your opponent?
Mine was a really interesting game. I actually ended up going into Necrons. So I was really excited because I'm actually painting up a Necron army right now.
The Nihalic
Dynasty, yes. So
you.
that's my dynasty. But on the day, my opponent was playing Sotek, which actually is really good because gives them the ability to fall back and shoot at -1.
Okay. Comes in handy with the Warriors.
Yeah, so, which is exactly what he's running. So he was running 2 20-man bricks of warriors with flares.
Okay.
And another thing is within half range they get another pip of AP, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. But yeah, so 2 20-man bricks of warriors. He had an Overlord. He had a Technomancer. He had two. He had 2 Doomsday Arks.
Yes.
A squad of 3 Locust Destroyers. Just 3 little Scarabs, and he had a Monolith.
Oh yeah. Though he had the big brick.
Yeah, he had the big brick. Yeah, look pretty
chunky.
look kind of cute. He had the older model.
Yeah.
But it looked kind of cute. But anyway, he had the Monolith. So the 2 big secondaries that I took were Bring It Down and Engage on All Fronts. And sorry guys, I can't remember what the 3rd secondary I picked was. But anyway, I had picked his ace to be the squad of Locust Destroyers.
Okay.
And the Joker that I picked was going to be my squad of Black Knights. Because I always tend to overextend with them or be really aggressive, and they're usually the first to die.
True. And I think when you're running a squad of 6,
Yeah.
it still gives you double the power level, but your point level is still low.
Yeah, so it's basically 12 power there.
Yeah.
So, that would have given him 12 victory points. But anyways, turn 1, the center objective was just outside of a little patch of woods, so just dense terrain. And this is where I actually spent the 2 CP to pre-game move the knights to get closer. But I just made sure that the last guy was still within 6 inches of Azrael to get the full rerolls to hit from the Chapter Master. I did that, and I ended up putting the +1 to hit from the Chaplain
Nice.
into on the same squad of Black Knights. Turn 1, moved them up into the dense cover. So they were just moving. So 17 inches less 2, so 15-inch move into the dense cover. And I popped off Weapons of the Dark Age.
Hitting on 2s.
Hitting on 2s, re-rolling all hits, and everything went into the Monolith. My opponent, he later told me that he was so stressed out about all the melters that he did not stop for a second to consider the plasma. And it was so shocking when, after all of that, my Black Knights turned around and just went, cool, here's a casual 18 damage into the Monolith. And he just looked at it and went, what? My Monolith's down to 6? And he said, okay, cool. It back is at 7. Living Metal will kick it next turn. I'm going to get it back up. And then my Terminators walked up and then put in some more Cyclone missiles into it. And just went, here's 3 damage from Cyclones. And he went, that hurts. Because now I can't go up a bracket with Living Metal. So he had to actually move his Cryptek up and try to repair the Monolith. He got 2 wounds up. So it went up from 3 wounds to 5 wounds. And the Living Metal put it at 6 wounds, which was still 1 shy of where it bracketed.
Yeah, I remember you told me about this. He was really upset because you had CP rerolled 1 the damage on the cycle.
Yeah, correct. So the missiles actually did 2 damage, and then I spent a CP there, so 4 CP burn turn 1. So more than that actually, 2 for the pre-game move, 2 for Weapons of the Dark Age, 1 for the CP reroll.
That's 5.
5 CP burn turn 1.
Out of 7 CP.
And then, yeah, so I
reroll the 2 into a 3.
Into a 3. Because had it been a 2, he would have still gotten to the bottom of his second bracket.
Yeah.
But I kept him at the top of his third bracket. So that really hurt his Monolith because he was just hitting on 5s.
See, people, CP rerolls sometimes do work.
But yeah, so next turn he actually moved a big brick of his Necron Warriors using the Veil of Darkness, put him straight onto the midfield, had another squad walk up, and he had the Monolith. He had 2 squads of Necron Warriors, and he had 3 Destroyers, and I think it was one of the Ghost Arks. I can't remember. All into the Black Knights. But I had a save from a 5-up Jink, because I just moved, so it wasn't a 4-up. And I had
Dense cover.
And I had dense cover working for me. So that really helped, because he was basically just hitting me on 5s. And yeah, the Monolith was just hitting me on 6s at that point. So, but if eventually, with all that damage still coming in, my Black Knights all but died, and they was just down to 1 guy. So next turn, I think my Redemptor walked up and killed off the Monolith. My attack bikes came up, tried to kill one of the Doomsday Arks, failed. Actually did nothing into the injured the Doomsday Ark, bracketed it, but besides that, it was nothing. And in hindsight, I moved them up alongside the woods instead of moving them into the woods. So I overextended them a little bit. Again, same amount of fire from the warriors, same amount of fire from the destroyers and this thing, and then the Doomsday Arc. Those attack bikes died pretty quickly. They did advance. No, they didn't advance. They also just moved. But yeah, because I wanted to make sure that I got as much as I could with the +1 to hit. I didn't want to take the penalty for the -1 to hit, but I wanted to be in melter range as well. So my greed got the better of me that day. But my lone Black Knight basically came and moved to the far end of his deployment zone on the other side, and he just sat there the whole game, just literally like 2 inches from one board edge and 3 inches from the other, so far out in that corner, and he just kept getting me points per engage.
Are you sure your opponent just didn't confuse him for a dead model?
No. My dead was on the other side because the table next to me was actually empty, so we were actually just putting all our stuff there. But so he just came and sat literally in the far end, and then I had my intercessors literally up along the line close to the short board edge, and all I had to do was move them 6 inches and keep them behind obscuring.
Oh, okay.
And they just sat there the whole game, did not fire a single shot.
Again?
Yeah, and just got me engaged. So literally got me 2 points for engage because I just kept staying in 3 board quarters throughout the game. And then my attack bikes and my ATVs just went around the corner. I ended up getting the Doomsday Arc from the back. And then my Terminators tried to get into the second Doomsday Arc with my Chaplain, failed the 7-inch charge twice with the CP. So that hurt.
That hurts.
And then he ended up moving his Doomsday Arc 6 inches away. So next turn, even if I moved them 5 inches, I'd have been making an 8-inch charge, which I did in the next turn. I ended up rolling a 9. So they ended up moving 11 inches on an 8-inch charge, which is what I needed. Anyway, got there. Bye-bye Doomsday Arc. So Monolith gone, Doomsday Arc's gone. That was me maxed out on bringing down.
Okay.
And then, yeah, he turned on, he did a lot of damage.
So I
as
think
well.
it's very safe to say that you won this game.
Yeah, I won quite convincingly, but it got me to learn a lot about Necrons and how they play, and give me some insight about how I should start playing my Necrons as well. You'll be seeing them soon as and when I get enough of them painted up. We'll bring them on the channel sometime.
Yeah, and they'll be there to match the Votan.
Yeah. So something to look forward to. If that isn't a reason for you to subscribe.
Yeah, that was a very good. It was a very fun tournament all up. Like 6 games, 6 custom games.
Yeah, and really, really good opponents, really fun opponents. Yeah, I can't fault them. I actually enjoyed playing such unique list builds.
I think something that took the tournament very far was just the fact that it was just 1350.
Yeah.
Like, we were not as exhausted. Like, normally, even a 2,000 point tournament, day 1, you're considering whether you want to show up the next day at all.
Well, yeah, we do sometimes, but yeah, we didn't go for 3-hour long games. It was just 2-hour long games, which was really nice. And then we could sit down, we could have a chat. It was so casual. Like, you didn't have to think in a competitive mindset if you didn't want to. You know, at the end of the day, we were there to have fun. And,
exactly.
You know, some of the armies, they were so beautifully painted. Like, especially my second Orc opponent with the pizzas. They were so orc. Good. The what was it?
Wow,
pizza. So that was really nice. But yeah, basically, I think so. That was a bit of an insight into how our weekend was and how the 6 games went. We'll be back in a minute for closing statements. Cool. Okay, so that was 6 missions over 2 days. Lots of dice rolled, lots of fun had.
Yeah, it was a good weekend. But ultimately, I think even our viewers would care to see where we landed on our final scores.
Yeah.
The scoring is not entirely dependent just on your performance in the games. And I think since my brother and I just kept changing our armies up in the last hour, we couldn't really decide on one theme.
Yeah.
So it's scored between how well your army's painted, what your army theme is and how well uniform the story is, and how well you perform in the games.
Yeah.
Now, I went 3 victories, 3 losses.
Yeah.
And you went 4 victories and 2 losses.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with that being said, again, there was such beautiful skill there with the painting.
Yeah, we like my army looks pretty basic compared to that, and some of the models I paint, I do say so myself, I'm proud of, you know.
Yeah.
But some of them are works of art.
I'm just an impatient painter, and I chose to paint something completely with trims. So,
But I think you would have lost a lot of points on non-synergy given the fact that
Yeah.
you took a Chaos Knight.
yeah, just because the bases didn't match up,
Yeah.
it was one big detriment to my scoring.
Yeah.
So
Bases hurt me too, because when I started building my Dark Angels army, I wanted them to be in this desert world with nothing there, completely barren. So I made sure my bases were barren, but you know that worked against me, I guess.
yeah, there really isn't much to look at.
No, I need
But
to work
I
on
think
my
that
bases.
was the plan.
Yeah,
So-
I need to redo my bases now, I suppose. So that's my learning from Arc.
Okay. So between all of that, out of 169 players, I ranked 149.
Okay, and I did a respectable 110. That's where I ended up. But you can see pictures of the entire event. They've got an entire photo dump down there, including some of the models from the Arc Open, which were
Yes.
judged. Some beautiful artworks in there.
Yeah. And not all of it Warhammer. Like there was Lord of the Rings. There was
Marvel. I mean, there
yeah.
was a really well painted MODOK on there.
Yeah. True.
So you know, and some of it was just busts, you know, of different characters. I want to say D&D because there was an orc, which I
I
didn't
think there
really
was a
like.
few from Magic the Gathering as well.
Yeah, I'll put a link down in the description. If you check out the Arc website, you can see all the amazing artwork, and I hope it inspires you as it did me as well.
Yeah, if you like our content, like what we do, please like and subscribe, and please, if you can, share this around. We'd love to get some traction and
Yeah.
get some more people and your opinions.
Also, hit the notification bell because apparently that's important for some reason.
Yeah.
The algo gods need it.
We are going to be getting more boarding actions in now. We finally got the Angron book, so we got
Yeah.
more missions and actual Warlord traits you can take.
Looking forward to that, are you?
Yes. But unfortunately, they still don't have thousands on the death card.
Oh well, give it time. It'll come.
Okay.
But yeah, more games of Tempest, more games of boarding actions coming up, and more, of course, the odd competitive game as well.
Yeah. So if you guys have any suggestions, please put it in the comments. We do try to read and respond to each of them.
Yep.
But with that being said, we are Success Scribes, and remember,
Let the stories roll.